The subcommittee will come to order. Let me welcome everyone to today's subcommittee markup for the fiscal year 2025 appropriations bill for the Department of State Foreign Operations and related programs. I want to first thank Chairman Cole for getting the Appropriations Committee to a really good start. This is an aggressive schedule, but it's crucial that we get our work done. So, Mr. Chairman, thank you for your leadership, and thank you for your help, and thank you for your assistance. The State and Foreign Operations Appropriations Bill before us today totals $51.7 billion in new budget authority, which is a cut of $7.6 billion from fiscal year 2024 enacted level. That's 11%, and $12.3 billion below the President's fiscal year 2025 request. This allocation and the policies within the bill will allow us to build on important changes in the fiscal year 24 bill signed into law only a few months ago. There are some who will say that cuts of this magnitude jeopardize the United States leadership in the world and makes us less safe. I completely disagree. In fact, it's just the opposite. The bill before us prioritizes funding that directly supports U.S. national security. It eliminates controversial or ineffective programs that American taxpayers do not support and that, quite frankly, our allies and our partners don't much care for either. As the saying goes, the world is on fire right now. We should not be throwing fuel on the flames by funding organizations requested in the President's budget that employ terrorists like UNRWA, provide a platform on the global stage to the worst human rights abusers, like the Human Rights Council, take bogus legal action against Israel as it fights for its very existence, the International Criminal Court, and the ICJ, the International Court of Justice, or that cower to Communist China and deny Taiwan observer status, like the World Health Organization. We should not pay other countries climate reparations, like the Loss and Damages Fund, or also promote and mobilize migrant caravans to the United States southern border. And that's just any number of international organizations, thanks to this administration's open border policy. You see, this bill stops all of those organizations and more, not just because it's a waste of money, and that would be enough, but because those organizations actually work against our interest and that of our allies. Now, speaking of allies, the bill provides unwavering support for Israel and fully funds the United States-Israel Memorandum of Understanding by providing $3.3 billion in security assistance. It expands upon new conditions included in the fiscal year 24 bill aimed at addressing rampant anti-Semitism and anti-Israel bias throughout the United Nations and other international organizations. Confronting the national security threat posed by the Chinese Communist Party remains a top priority. And the bill provides $2.1 billion to counter the malign influence of the People's Republic of China. And note this, which is above the President's request. And remember, that is within a significant reduction of the top line. We can do better with less, and this bill shows that. Within this funding, $500 million foreign military financing, including for Taiwan security needs. The bill also prioritizes funding for other critical partners in the Indo-Pacific, including the Philippines and the Pacific Island countries. Let's turn to our hemisphere. This bill makes important investments to combat trafficking of fentanyl and the transnational criminal organizations behind the scourge, confronting every community in America. The bill also holds accountable governments failing to cooperate on counter-narcotics and other issues of critical importance to the United States. Look, for example, no funds, not $1, can go to Mexico until the certification is made that an agreement is in place to restore water deliveries owed to the United States from Mexico. We also have said that we will treat friends as friends, and the distinguished president of Mexico has not been acting like a friend lately by acting and actively opposing U.S. policy to promote freedom and democracy in Cuba and Venezuela, and failing to fully support counter-narcotics trafficking or countering migration through Mexico to our wide-open southern border. The bill increases support for freedom and democracy for the people of Cuba by providing $35 million for democracy funding and $30 million for the Office of Cuba Broadcasting. It also reins in attempts by the Biden administration to promote engagement with what it calls so-called entrepreneurs. Look, let's be clear. The only independent entrepreneurs in Cuba, in that closed communist economy, are in prison. Anyone else claiming to be an entrepreneur is licensed by the regime, meaning the regime is the big winner from these dangerous and insulting policies. Now, because the administration attempted to get around the prohibition that Congress, by the way, agreed to, the prohibition that was included in the fiscal year 2024 law, this bill broadens the prohibition on funding for the so-called entrepreneurs for fiscal year 2025. Now, finally, this bill includes all longstanding pro-life protections, which includes a prohibition on all funds from being used to pay for abortions, and builds on those requirements by applying the Protecting Life in Global Health Assistance policy to all global health funding. And the bill also prohibits funding for the UN Population Fund. This bill promotes American values by increasing funding for religious freedom programs abroad and supports faith-based organizations that are helping deliver United States foreign assistance. Now, this bill would not be what it is without the frankly amazing input from each member of this subcommittee. Your thoughtful recommendations have shaped the measure before you, and I am so grateful for your invaluable contributions. Now, how can we thank the staff enough? You all know that they have not stopped, right, from FY24 to the supplementals and now this. So I just can't thank the staff on both sides of the aisle. We really appreciate all your help, your hard work, and your lack of sleep. Before I yield to the ranking member, I want to note that, Barbara, this is your final State and Foreign Operations Subcommittee markup. And so, look, her and I even laugh about this. We could not be farther apart on so many issues. But the ranking member and I understand each other. We have frank, real conversations, which I greatly appreciate. And I also want to recognize her contributions and her commitments to the committee, the Appropriations Committee, but frankly, I would say more than that, to this subcommittee. So now I officially recognize the ranking member, Ms. Lee, for her remarks. You're recognized.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and to Chairman Cole and to our ranking member, DeLauro. Thank you all so much for your leadership and for keeping us on track. Yes, this is my 17th year on the Appropriations Committee, and today, as the chairman said, it's my last State and Foreign Operations Subcommittee markup. But although we disagree on many issues, as you heard in his opening statement, I really do appreciate the friendship that we've developed over the years and truly respect his leadership. And we'll miss all of the members on this committee. But I tell you, we know that our work is sort of a passion project on both sides of the aisle. So it's been really remarkable being on this committee. We serve on this committee, this subcommittee, because we care deeply about how the United States engages with the rest of the world. Now, I have spent my time on this committee, this subcommittee, and other committees to lift up people and countries and regions which receive little attention from this subcommittee. Many of these people, regions, and countries have populations that look like me. I've been seeking each and every time we have a bill to address inequities and injustice, increase human dignity, and tackling problems that our country faces by working with partnerships, in partnerships with others, including countries, regions, and populations, again, that look like me. I'm incredibly proud of the lives that we saved through PEPFAR and the Global Fund, the children that we've helped through the Children in Adversity program, or Vaccinate, and how we have refocused attention on our close neighbors in the Caribbean, descendants primarily of Africa and the Middle Passage. SFOPS gives us and the majority and minority staff that supports us a tremendous opportunity to make a difference in the lives of millions of people. And I specifically also would like to recognize the staff that I've worked with over the years. And Mr. Chairman, I'd just like to mention their names, if it's okay with you with regard to our time. Celia Alvarado, Craig Higgins, Aaron Kulojeski. I hope I got this right, Aaron, your last name. And she's been phenomenal throughout this entire time I've been on the subcommittee as chair and then as ranking member. Dean Coulibaris, Jean Kwan, Laura Mignon, Maren Stein, Jonathan Stivers, Stephanie Reed, Lillian Wasbury, Jason Wheelock, and of course on my staff, my personal staff, Gregory Adams, and many more interns, especially. Some of you may know I started my public service career as an intern for the late Congressman Ron Dellums, and this was during Watergate. And then as a former chief of staff for 11 years here on Capitol Hill, as a staffer to Ron Dellums. So this has been more than half of my life that I've been in public life. And members of the subcommittee, though, as I said earlier, we have policy disagreements, but our commitment to this mission and the staff's mission, again, I want to thank the staff because they work in an incredibly bipartisan manner to try to make sure that the goals of both sides are met, and they have done a lot of the heavy lifting, and I want to thank them again for that. Also, the work of diplomats and development experts cannot be supported, however, with this bill, a 12% cut, as we're contemplating in this fiscal year 2025 at the House mark. What we're faced with today is a deeply political bill that seeks to satisfy the most extreme, I think, here, not on this committee necessarily, but throughout this House, without consideration of the real-life consequences of our national security and the well-being of our allies. Outside of general underinvestment in our work globally to pursue American interests and values, this bill repeats many of the bad ideas of last year's House bill and then double down with some new ones. And I hope over the coming weeks we'll be able to discuss many of these deficiencies, but this morning let me just focus on three things. The devastating impact of climate change, the patterns that we see, the need to empower women, not just as economic actors, but as having autonomy over their bodies, and the disastrous consequences of the United States walking away from the rest of the world. First, this bill takes, quite frankly, a dishonest approach to the threat posed by climate change. People are confronting the impacts of human-caused climate change right now. Life-threatening temperatures, crop failures, floods, and severe weather. Many of us are experiencing this in our own districts and hometowns. The past 12 months have been the hottest ever measured, and this year's hurricane season is predicted to be especially active because of record ocean temperatures. Yet this bill ignores this reality. It includes no funding for clean energy, no funding to help communities adapt to drought, rising coastlines, or extreme heat, no funding to stop deforestation or recurring coastal flooding. And even worse, the bill cuts off cooperation with other countries to address this existential threat. Climate change is taking people's homes and livelihoods over and over again, and this bill is silent on it. The second issue is the continued war that this bill wages on women's reproductive freedom. 218 million women still do not have access to the tools needed to decide when and how to have a baby, and hundreds of thousands die in childbirth. But the House mark will make it harder for women to access care. It also cuts off funding to UNFPA, the one partner that provides services to mothers and their babies in the hardest places to reach. We know these are failed policies with negative impacts for child mortality and health and economic empowerment, but yet the majority wants to repeat the same destructive playbook. But perhaps the most damaging aspect of this House mark is the abdication and retreat of United States leadership around the world. The bill projects a world view that sees issues and countries as black and white, good and evil. If we don't like everything about an organization or can't control all of their actions, this bill prohibits funding it. It's our way or the highway, and this is fundamentally undemocratic and anti-democratic for a country that stands for democracy. These contradictions are very glaring in this bill. This is not how the world works, and it is this approach that is causing the United States to become increasingly isolated. Instead of listening to partners and addressing concerns together, this mark forces the U.S. to go it alone and reject any country with a different perspective or point of views. It rejects burden sharing and dialogue. Perhaps telling the largest increases in this bill is foreign military financing, and it zeroes out the United Nations while outright prohibiting a half dozen United Nations bodies. The message of this bill is more weapons and less cooperation. Today's House mark would have severe consequences for United States leadership, our ability to work with others on shared challenges, and our long-term national security. The world is full of threats that don't respect borders, from climate change to pandemics to assertive dictators. We can't stick our head in the sand and hope it will all go away. And so it's been a tremendous honor to lead this subcommittee as chair and now as ranking member, but I will depart this committee deeply concerned that our policies are leading us in the wrong direction and leaving the United States alone on the global stage. Democrats will not support a bill if it means turning our backs to the world's most vulnerable women or the looming threat of climate change and destruction. And I take some solace, though, in knowing that the final appropriations bills need bicameral and bipartisan support, which is not reflective in this current draft. So I look forward to improving this bill, as it would be disastrous to go forward as currently written and gives our adversaries an even larger opening. We talk about countering Chinese and Russian influence. Well, this bill gives our adversaries an even larger opening to fill the void in global leadership. And I look forward to working with the chairman to try to make sure that we close these gaps. Thank you again, and I yield.
Thank you, distinguished ranking member. Now it's an honor to recognize the distinguished chairman of the full committee, Mr. Cole, for his remarks.
Thank you very much, Chairman Diaz-Balart, and thank you to the Ranking Member Lee and Ranking Member of the full committee, DeLauro, and to all the members of the subcommittee for being with us this morning. The United States has long been a world leader in global cooperation and stability. Our work on today's fiscal year 2025 State, Foreign Operations, and Related Programs Appropriations Bill continues that posture. The bill prioritizes funding that supports our national security and interests. We ensure that Americans are safer at home and abroad without compromising fiscal responsibility. The legislation makes clear that we will not retreat from the cause of freedom. It confronts the growing creep of hostile regimes by countering Communist China's influence in the Indo-Pacific region and intimidation of Taiwan and our other partners in the area. It also reaffirms our steadfast support for Israel as they face a life and death struggle against vicious and evil terrorists. Further, the measure supports important religious freedom programs abroad and maintains long-standing bipartisan pro-life protections, such as preserving the Mexico City policy and prohibiting funds for the United Nations Population Fund. Robust oversight and accountability of taxpayer dollars are also prioritized. This includes restricting President Biden's ability to redirect funds to wasteful climate programs that harm energy security and economic development in our country and around the world. I thank Chairman Diaz-Balart, Ranking Member Lee, and the majority and minority staff for their hard work. I look forward to consideration of this bill, which reflects a commitment to freedom and democracy. With that, Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Thank you, Chairman Cole. Now it's also a pleasure to recognize the distinguished ranking member of the full committee, Ms. DeLauro, for her remarks. You're recognized.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman. And I want to thank you and the ranking member and Chairman Cole for holding the markup and for the work on this bill. And I too would like to thank the majority and the minority staff. There is no way to describe the amount of work that these young people put into this effort so that we can conduct the business of our government. Barbara, I didn't reflect that on the fact that this would be your last subcommittee markup at SFOPS. But as I listened to you read through the mission and the content of the State Foreign Operations Bill, it essentially reflects your commitment and your dedication to a just society, not just here in the United States, but worldwide. It also reflects your views about how we need to extend U.S. leadership, U.S. values in the world. And no one holds a candle to you on your focus on children and on women and on minorities. And that really is, to quote all of our kids and grandkids, is awesome. So thank you. We thank you very, very much. And please understand and know that you will be missed and your voice will be missed. And thank you for never being afraid to stand up for what you believe in and to speak out about it. So thanks so much. Once again, today we are marking up a state and a foreign operations bill that resurrects the doomed isolationism of the early 20th century. Just a few months ago, after Democrats and Republicans voted for final bipartisan 2024 funding bills, the majority proposes that we decimate the state and foreign operations bill with a 12% cut from where we were just have been in March. Let's take stock for a moment. Around the globe, America's adversaries threaten the peace and the prosperity of the free world. Wars in the Middle East and Europe and humanitarian crises on nearly every continent call for American leadership. And not since the Cold War have our diplomatic influence and soft power been more critical to keeping Americans safe. Yet, House Republicans have proposed a bill that would diminish America's world leadership and obstruct our ability to support our allies, deter our adversaries, surpass our competitors, wage our influence, and to continue leading the free world. We must lead the free world. America is still the indispensable nation for any serious global action. But whether we are talking about our diplomatic strength, economic investments, or humanitarian assistance, this bill unravels the hard-fought credibility and influence we have earned to be a global leader. This bill threatens our national security, it threatens women's health globally, it hampers our response to the climate crisis, it undermines our diplomatic corps by underfunding the State Department and USAID, and completely blocks support for the United Nations Relief and Works Agency, leaving behind some of the most vulnerable people facing the most unthinkable humanitarian disasters around the world. The majority is yet again diminishing the global standing of the United States, what we stand for and what our values are, for our own people and for people around the world who look to America, the world's largest economy and oldest constitutional democracy, for inspiration and for hope. This bill abdicates U.S. leadership in the United Nations and other multilateral and international institutions by not including any funding for the UN regular budget, the UN Development Program, UN Women, and UNICEF. When it comes to international cooperation, withdrawing from these organizations allows our competitors and our adversaries to take our place, replace our influence. And by shortchanging USAID at a time when a historic number of people are facing conflict and instability, we are abandoning the most vulnerable people in the world and failing to live up to America's ideals. I am awestruck that the majority is once again dragging us through the same ridiculous song and dance on these appropriations bills that lead to chaos, division, and shutdown threats. As I said throughout last year, and as we proved together this spring, final spending bills will be the product of negotiations between Democrats and Republicans in the House and the Senate. The majority's top-line funding level falls short of the American people's needs, short of what both parties just agreed to in March. 80% of the Appropriations Committee voted to pass the final 2024 Appropriations Acts. Our starting point for 2025 must provide at a minimum a 1% increase in defense and non-defense funding, consistent with the framework set in the Fiscal Responsibility Act that Republicans demanded. Democrats will accept nothing less than a 1% increase over 2024 in non-defense and defense funding. That is what the law provides for. For the sake of our national security, for women's health globally, and our response to a climate crisis, Republicans must abandon their reckless and bipartisan path, join Democrats at the table to govern, and it is time for the majority to govern. For all of these reasons, I cannot support this bill. Thank you, and I yield back.
Thank you so much. Do any members, other members, wish to make opening remarks? Yes, Dean of the House, you recognize her.
I just wanted to join the chorus of members of this subcommittee toward you, Mr. Chairman, and your cohorts for putting together a great bill. This is a really good one. I'm especially thankful that you included numerous provisions relating to fentanyl. Folks, we're losing 100,000 of our fellow citizens every year through the use of fentanyl, and especially young people. I know that the fight will take a long time to mature, but your bill smooths the way for international efforts to stop the flow of fentanyl across our borders. Unfortunately, most of the fentanyl is coming from the border, where we have not enforced the law on keeping fentanyl from our young people. It's the border. And for gosh sakes, that's pretty simple. And your bill is an effort to stem the flow. And I thank you for it. Congratulations.
Yes, gentleman from Florida.
Thanks. I want to thank all our leaders, some more dramatic than others. But Barbara, thank you so much, Representative Lee, for all your years of service. Just quickly about this bill. You know, sort of a heartbreaking bill for me because I really like parts of it, as I'm sure the chair knows. I'm very appreciative of the support for Israel, and there are other items in here that are very good, but I'm very concerned about what this bill does to women in the world. I'm not going to go into it in detail, but for example, I can't understand why we would not fund a program to end female genital mutilation. That's just, there's no excuse for keeping that out, and there are other things that really pertain to women's health. So I hope as we move forward, we can rectify some of these issues. With that, I yield back.
Thank you. Any other member feel compelled? Seeing none, And seeing no amendments, and I recognize the Dean of the House, Mr. Rogers, Chairman Rogers, for a purpose of making a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I move the bill be favorably reported to the full committee.
Question is on the motion. Those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. No. The ayes have it. The motion is agreed to. I will now ask unanimous consent that staff be permitted to make technical and conforming changes to the bill and report, and without objection ordered. Copies of the bill and report with the technical and conforming changes will be delivered to all full committee members' offices no later than 3 business days before full committee. Again, I want to once again thank all of you, and also thank the staff, and with that, that concludes today's markup. The meeting now stands adjourned.